part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for stopping by to the latest edition of Sabol Brothers on the Baseline Podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm John Sabol.
And I'm Scott Sabol.
Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. That way you can get the latest editions, the latest episodes directly to your smartphone. Follow us on Twitter at Sabol Brothers. Follow yours truly at John_Sabol.
And you can follow me on Twitter, Scott Sabol FOX8, and you can also follow me on Instagram, Scott Sabol PICS. That's Scott Sabol Pics.
And hopefully you guys are already following us because we've got a quite avid listenership over the last couple of years here. So we just recently celebrated our 10,000th download of our podcast. Scott, pretty monumental moment for us. Pretty cool.
It is, yeah. And and I think June will be 3 years that we've been doing the podcast. Is that right? Am I doing that right now? Like 55 episodes somewhere in there? I forget how many, but looking forward to a whole lot of good things here, especially as the weather gets better and as we kind of transition into baseball season.
I think that's a good segue because our guest today is somebody, if you've probably Googled pictures of old Cleveland Municipal Stadium, maybe League Park, Richfield Coliseum, and maybe even Cleveland Arena, there's a pretty good chance one of the pictures that you saw was from this man's website. His name is Bob Busser, and he has been to more than 900 sports venues across the country over the last 4 or 5 decades plus. And he just said he has over how many pictures on your website, Bob?
150,000 plus. There's probably more.
That is incredible. Well, thanks for stopping by here on the podcast. Scott and I are really eager to chat with you about some Cleveland Stadium stuff for you.
Well, thank you for having me, guys. I do love the city of Cleveland. It's a fun town for me. I've been there many times, and I'm looking forward to coming back and hanging with you guys.
Yeah, you got to come back, Scott. He's coming back sometime this summer. I said we'll take him out to a nice, good play establishment here locally. And
fantastic. Looking forward to it. Got
to take him over to the League Park Baseball Heritage Museum.
Oh, no question.
Oh, speaking of which, this is a floorboard from League Park. It is probably the only one known in existence, and I borrowed it in 1986 or whenever I was there, before they sealed up the old Indians clubhouse. And that's one of my. Some guy wanted to buy it for $100, and I'm like, no.
Wow.
Well, that's a good segue because Scott. Scott, you've seen his pictures online.
I mean, of course. Yeah.
It is incredible. And Bob, real quick, go tell us what the website is that the fans or listeners may not have seen it.
It's www.ballparks.smugmug.com.
Wow. So if you're listening to this, we're on Zoom here, but Bob basically picked up, how big is that? Like a 4 foot or what, about 3 feet long piece of wood, maybe by 3 inches?
Yeah, probably
36 by 3, maybe.
Yeah, you should have seen the looks I got when I went on the plane at Chicago at O'Hare to go home. They're like, "What the blank is this?"
So that was back in the 80s. That was before the old TSA stuff, before 9/11 and everything. So let's start there, I guess. So Cleveland League Park closed in 1946, final year. They tore it down, I believe, 51?
Yes, I think that 50, 51, somewhere in there. Because the Browns used to train there, and I think Browns trained there for a few years. They moved into Municipal Stadium. As you know, the neighborhood kind of went to hell. It was not a great neighborhood, and the Indians just moved out and basically abandoned the park, I guess is a good way to put it.
Right. And and that park kind of sat there in how do I want to say various stages of I don't want to say disrepair, because that sounds like something different, but they tore it down, but there were still remnants of it there for decades and decades, right? I mean, up until the mid 2000s.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of reminded me, I was one of the last photographers in Old Tiger Stadium in Detroit in 2004. I shot it for the Baseball Hall of Fame, and it was in a state of disrepair, but it reminded me of that when I walked into League Park, and I got into the clubhouse before they sealed it up. And it just they took me into the Tigers locker room and things like that, and it just made me sick to my stomach to see it the way that was. It was in bad shape.
You were talking about Tiger Stadium. My brother and I went up there in '99, the last year, and they tore it down, I believe, in 2009. Let's skip to Tiger Stadium real quick here because you brought that up, because that's one of the latest ballparks that was still fully there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it was there for a decade before they tore it down in 2009. What was it like to walk into a clubhouse that basically hadn't been used in many, many years? What was that like?
It was kind of eerie because, Tiger Stadium was a ballpark. That's all it was. It was nothing more. There was no luxury boxes. And you walked into the clubhouse, which was very, in the day, I've seen pictures of the clubhouse when the Tigers won the World Series, and
Mhm.
it was really kind of ornate in for Tiger Stadium. They had tile on the walls and the carpeting and everything. But when I walked in there, pipes had burst, so the floor was flooded. Um, the lockers were all in disarray. There's photos on my website of it, and the manager's office was destroyed. I couldn't get in the visitors clubhouse. He wouldn't let me in there. I don't know why, but um, it was in a really bad state of disrepair. It just it made you sick. To think of all the Tiger greats that were in there, from Ty Cobb to Hank Greenberg to Gibby to Alan Trammell to Willie Horton, all these guys, K-Line. And to see it in that state of repair, it reminded me of the time that I went into the old Olympia before they tore it down, and it was a mess. It was like a war zone in there, like a bomb went off. And it makes you sick when people or cities do this to the ballparks. It just it irritates me, but it's progress, I guess.
Was there anything in there in the locker room like
No,
I don't, was it just pretty much cleaned out?
it was pretty much cleaned out. There was probably some papers and things like that. And this guy who was with the city of Detroit, who was with me the whole time, kept his eagle eye on me so nothing fell into my camera bag.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I remember Tiger Stadium. That trip, Scott, 99. I mean, we
Yeah.
parked in someone's front yard.
Yeah, yes, which wasn't a great neighborhood either.
No.
No,
You
Corktown was not good back then.
I know, Bob, when you and I spoke on the phone last night, I told you the story in 2015. My wife and I were driving up from Florida to Michigan to their my in-laws' cottage. We stopped in Detroit because that's when they were going to be renovating the land there, which was in this Navin field. It was just the field is still there,
Yep.
and the center field flagpole was still there.
Yep.
And they were going to build a little baseball stadium around there for, I think, like the Police Athletic League or something like that there.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and I remember, Scott, going there and seeing the corner buildings that were there, like across the
right?
street, that used to be like the team shop or a souvenir stand. And I walked in there with my wife, Bob, and I didn't say this on the phone, but I asked them if they had anything from Tiger Stadium. And it was like I don't know, kind of like a thrift store. And these two women were working there really young. They probably weren't even around when Tiger Stadium was there. And or remembered it at all. And they said, no, we don't have anything except for these little mini felt pennants. They're like, 6 inches long. They found them in a dresser in the basement of the building when they occupied it or when they bought it a few years earlier. And they were like, Tigers pennants, like literally like 6 inches. And I'm like, oh, how much you want for them? They're like $100. I'm like, I'm good. But anyways, it was kind of cool to Scott to see that the
Sure.
area there when we were going to that game there.
Well, my first time at Tiger Stadium, I graduated high school in '76, so that'll give you an idea how old I am. I've seen a lot. My parents took me on a trip to New England, where my mom was from, and we came back. My dad, who hated baseball, my stepdad, we went by all these ballparks. So we went by Cleveland Stadium the first time I ever saw it. I walked in, talked to a guard, and he let me in to take a few pictures. They were playing the Tigers that night. Then we went up to Detroit. And as we're in Detroit, I go to Tiger Stadium, and I found a security guard. And I told him who I was. I'm 18 years old and I'm from California, blah, blah, blah. He goes, go on in and take some photos if you want. So, I mean, my eyes got this big, Tiger Stadium is one of the classic ballparks of all time.
Mhm.
So I've got my 1976 photos on my website, and it shows Tiger Stadium with the old green seats. It was painted green and white before they redid the exterior in blue and everything. But that is one of the bigger thrills in my life. That was a fun day.
Well, let's go back to your beginnings in this. How did you get started in taking pictures of old parks? And I mean, you mentioned the huge library of pictures you had. Take us back to the beginning.
Um, it's probably, well, honestly, it started, I was one of the transistor radio kids of the 60s, meaning I would go to sleep in the summertime. I was 8 years old with my little transistor radio under my pillow so my parents wouldn't know. And I would listen to Vin Scully. Being from Southern California, Vin is God, and he could always paint the picture of Candlestick Park. He would paint pictures of Ebbets Field, like you were sitting right there. You could picture it in your mind. As an 8-year-old kid, this fascinated me for whatever reason. I think I was born to do what I do, and from then on, it just took off from there. I thought to myself, I got to see all these places. But of course, I was 8 years old, and my parents weren't going to let me take the car just then. But as luck would have it, it just built. The trip in '76 really got me going. Although on my webpage, there's two black and white photos of Dodger Stadium from God, it was either May, I think it was May of '67. Dodgers were playing the Mets. Claude Osteen pitched a four-hitter and won 2-0. I remember it like it was yesterday. Because when you're that young and you walk in and you see that giant field of green, it's the biggest thing you've ever seen in your life. Your eyes are this big, and of course you had your Dodger dog and your Coke, and it was a great night. I mean, I was hooked. So ever since then, whenever I get the chance, my buddies would always say, going on a road trip for us in SoCal is going to San Diego. Going on a road trip for Bob is driving to St. Louis for a doubleheader. And it's true.
You mentioned when you're a kid and you're going to a ball game. Think of like for Scott and maybe you go to the old Municipal Stadium and you'd go down that long hallway. Tiger Stadium was the same way. I know Yankee Stadium was
Absolutely.
too, and everything would just open up like that.
Yep.
And for you, growing up or doing that in California, and then over the course of your career and journey of seeing all these parks, that feeling, I bet for you, never ever gets old.
It never does, because when you walk into a ballpark for the first time, like there's a couple of ballparks obviously I haven't been to yet. I'll give you an example. I saw it through my mother-in-law's eyes before she passed away in 2013. We went on a family trip with my nephew and my sister-in-law, my wife and I, and mother-in-law to Boston. She wanted to see Fenway Park before she died, and she wanted to see my photos in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So we're walking through Fenway Park, and we're doing the tour, and my mother-in-law grabs my hand and she looks at me and she goes, "This is so surreal. Now I know why you love this place." And I said, "Yep." She got it. It's that feeling of, oh my God, I'm here. I cannot stand the Yankees. Sorry, Yankee fans. I'm a Red Sox fan, so it's they're persona non grata with us. But it was the first time I walked into Yankee Stadium, I thought, Babe Ruth played here. My wife said the same thing when I took her to a game at Yankee Stadium. She's like, "My God, Mickey Mantle played on this field. Lou Gehrig was here, Joe DiMaggio." And, of course, they tore it down, which is a crime. But, it's that you get that. It's almost like a euphoria that comes over you that, oh my God, I'm finally here, and I see that through my nephew's eyes. I've taken him to a lot of ball games, and he's in college now, and he's going to be working with the Reno Aces. And I see the joy in his eyes every time he goes into a ballpark. And to me, that is awesome, because what I do brings back so many memories to people. My Facebook page is blowing up. I have a ballpark page on there, and people just message me all the time. "Thank you. Thank you. You brought back, my childhood memories." That's why I do this, because a lot of these places are gone now. Tiger Stadium, it's gone. Yankee Stadium is gone. Cleveland Arena is gone. Cleveland Stadium's gone. You can't go there anymore. And one guy wrote me, goes, "I'm in my 80s now, and these are a lot of places I haven't seen. And I thank you for this. I can see them through your eyes, and I really appreciate that." That makes me feel good, because that's why I do this, and all this, I paid for this all on my own dime. So, it's paid off, it just gives you a good feeling to do something that people absolutely love.
How did the Hall of Fame track you down? How does that happen? I mean, you're going out there, you're doing your thing. Did they just one time give you a call, or did you develop a relationship with them?
I developed a relationship in 95, the year I got married. It was October 95. We went on our honeymoon to New York, and my wife goes, I want to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I'm like, I married the right woman. So we go to Cooperstown, and we walk by the photo archives department, the photo department. And my wife goes, you should go in there and tell them what you got. And I said, they're not going to give a blank about what I have. I'm going to keep it PG. So I walked in there and I met this lady, Pat Kelly, and I told her what I had. She goes, send me what you have when you get back and we'll talk. She called me. She goes, oh my God, send me all you have. And boom, I was in. They've used my photos on display in traveling exhibits. It's just been fun. If they need a project, I'm more than happy to help them out. And it's just, again, building relationships. John Horn, took over for Pat Kelly, is about to retire. So I'm going to have to find a whole new group of people to schmooze with when I get to Cooperstown. But, it's paid off, and I don't abuse the privilege. That's one thing in this business, as you know, John, you don't want to abuse your privileges because it'll come back to bite you.
Yes, very true. You got to use your use professionalism, but at the same time, use common sense.
Bingo. Don't be asking for crap, left and right. If you're there and they give you a media pass, be polite, say thank you,
Yep.
and do your thing. Talk to the players, talk to the managers, whatever you want to do, but don't be an a-hole and ask for the world, ask for a jersey or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's not good business at all.
It is pretty cool that the Hall of Fame basically has you on speed dial.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of fun. Jeff Idelson, the former president who's retired, he's a very good friend of mine, and Jeff and I talk quite a bit. And we just talk baseball mostly because he knows everybody in baseball. It's a lot of fun because you're privy to stories that you really can't repeat. Especially for Hall of Fame weekend. I've heard stories about some players imbibing a way too much, and there's an event they have, Hall of Fame weekend. That Saturday night is a players only dinner at the Otesaga Hotel. No one else is allowed in, not at all. The only guy that got in was Jeff Idelson because he's real good friends with all the players. And Milo Stewart, the photographer, he was the only time he was allowed in there. I forget what it was, but it's a hands off. You cannot get in. And that's basically, it's a bunch of big kids letting loose, because that's when you hear the stories about, oh, I raked you in Cleveland in 74, the whole bit. You hear stories, and every other word is an F-bomb. So
Right.
It's baseball.
Well, Bob, let's talk a little bit about our Cleveland teams here. You brought up, let's go to League Park real quick. You brought up that board. I'm going to show you here on Zoom my League Park brick.
We are a brother from another mother.
Yeah.
I tell you, I swear to God, John.
Scott has one too.
Now, for the record, John, I picked that up because you weren't in town. So remember that?
I'm the one that discovered the guy who had it.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
By the way, the guy I picked it up. Quick story, and then I walk in there, and this guy has stadium seats like you wouldn't believe. But he was a really big pipe smoker. And our dad used to smoke a pipe back when I was a kid. John, I don't even remember if you remember when Dad smoked a pipe, but I remember just smelling like pipe tobacco, and his pipes were all over the place. It was just one of those surreal, like I'm stepping back into like what it would have been 50 years ago. But anyway, I digress.
Scott, when you tell me this, and when you told me that at the time, but when you say this again, I can't help but think of like visualizing James Earl Jones from The Sandlot walking into that guy's family room.
It kind of was like that. It was kind of weird because he had stuff everywhere, and I'm like, and then I told you, I'm like, man, I wish I had, about thousands of dollars because he had stadium seats from Ebbets Field and all this stuff just in his family room, and it was pretty weird. But anyway, back to you, Bob. I had my mind got.
That's okay. No. It's like you said. It's surreal. Like when I went to League Park, it was surreal because I'm thinking back of Cy Young and all long way back. I'm thinking of all the great players that played there, and I know Babe Ruth hit his 500th home run there. I think it was.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'm thinking, my God, and I'm looking at the right field. I'm like, wow, that is short. I would have loved to have played here, but you walk into a park with me, walking into a park for the first time. in my mind, I'm thinking of the guys who played there. There's this little ballpark in Shreveport that's pretty much falling apart. It's an old minor league park, Spar Stadium, and I've been there several times. But I know Hank Aaron and Willie Mays played there, and in my mind, I could picture them roaming in the outfield. And this is old, dilapidated ballpark. It's that's what channels me when I walk into an arena or a ballpark. The old Boston Garden. I mean, you can't help but see Russell and Cousy and Larry Bird and everybody else. That's what it has.
So when you went to League Park in the 80s, we talk about how it got torn down in 51, but there was a section that did not get torn down for our listeners that didn't know, and that was the third base side grandstand, or actually, I guess you could say in today's terminology, it would be the third base side lower bowl seats. It was a section, maybe about, I don't know, 100 feet long by 50 feet or so. And everything else around the park, the double-decker stadium, gone, except for that. And underneath those stands, which was just big concrete, just corroding away, all the seats were obviously gone, was the Indians clubhouse.
Right.
And you have pictures on your website, and you just kind of alluded to them a little bit ago. Walk us through what it was like walking in there, and that's where you grabbed your wooden slab from there. But tell us what you saw, what was there, what you were feeling.
Well, the clubhouse was really small, which, it was like a lot like Connie Mack Stadium. I talked to Fergie Jenkins about this when he pitched for the Phillies. He said, excuse me, that clubhouse was really tiny.
Okay.
And League Park clubhouse, I mean, I'm thinking, how the heck can they get all these guys in this little tiny room? They had a small shower area. Walking in there, I'm thinking of all the Indians players that played there, we're going way back before. I'm not sure if Bob Feller pitched there or not.
He did.
He did. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
But you can picture the guys in there, and it was surreal because I closed my eyes for a second. I could picture them in my mind, just chattering about. And I remember that a lot of the old clubhouses had an old potbelly stove for heat, because this was the early part of the 20th century, and amenities were not really well known like the clubhouses of today. Basically they had a nail on the wall for your clothes, and that was it. But it was kind of cool to think, my God, all these Indians greats played here, and their ghosts to me were still there. The ones that had passed on, and it was a lot of fun because the next time I went back, I think it was 2 years later, it was all sealed up. And they had told me that somebody had been assaulted in there, so that's why they sealed it up. That's what I was told. So if that's true, that's too bad. But then right after that, they tore it all out. They tore down the grandstand and everything.
So how did they? When you were in there, what else did you see? You grabbed the wood. Was there anything else in there? Was there any like signs, pictures? Obviously, there's no clothes in there.
They would have come home with me if there was.
Yeah, I bet.
It's interesting.
That was really, there was some floorboards. This is the only one I took, which, of course, in hindsight, I could kick myself now. But, this is a memorabilia piece that is, you can't replace it. This is, they don't make this anymore. This piece of wood, people got, well, you got a piece of wood? And I said, you don't understand. For a ballpark geek, this is like the holy grail. It's like finding a rookie Griffey Jr. card. You think of all the great players that stepped on this floor.
I mean, the list goes on and on. And
so that absolutely.
So that floorboard's probably, because they rebuilt it. The first stadium, League Park 1, I guess you could say, Scott, was torn down in 1901, right? And then they rebuilt it in metal and wood. The first one was just wood.
Right. I believe so.
So that's 123 years old piece of wood you got there.
Yeah.
And John, didn't you say, because when we were, when I was at that one guy's house, I was asking him about League Park seats, and he was telling me that that a League Park seat probably goes for like $2,000 or $3,000, one of them. And I forget if it was you or that guy. For somebody mentioned that they had found like a row of League Park seats in a barn in Vermont.
Yes.
Now,
so
how that happened? Tell the story, John.
Okay. So Bob, I told you this on the phone yesterday.
Yeah.
So Scott, and for our listeners, it's actually not worth $2,000, Scott. It's probably worth more, closer to 10 now.
Really? Okay.
So we had a gentleman here on our podcast 2 years ago, Sean Walsh, who's from Cleveland. He
That's right.
owns originalstadiumseats.com. He now refurbishes a lot of old stadium seats across the country. People send them to him. He predominantly does stuff here locally, Cleveland, Detroit, a lot of local stuff here. And story goes, he had a connection in the Northeast, somewhere out, I think New Hampshire, or I think it was Vermont, actually, now I think about it. Someone had a barn, they were selling it. They opened up the barn, and there was like 35 or 40 League Park seats in rows, of total, but with like, 4 or 5 different rows or 6 different rows. So he and 2 other buddies bid on it and talked to the owner. And I think I don't know if they were going to tear the barn down, but they had been sitting in there since the stadium had been torn down in the early 50s. And this goes back, I want to say, like 2011, something like that. And yeah, and so they took them and they all split them up, and yeah, it was crazy. You can just Google League Park seats Vermont. That there's articles written online about it. I believe it was 2011 was when this happened. And Sean, of course, kept some of those, and then some of them he ended up selling off over the years. And when it comes to a League Park stadium seat, the end seat is the one that's most popular and most expensive because it has that really cool ornate figure with the glove and the bat and the ball. It's it's wrought iron, and it's very. And Scott, we saw it in Sean's house. When we recorded our podcast with him, but almost 2 years ago, we were in his basement and got to see him and sit in him and everything. Pretty cool.
Were they wide enough? I mean, those back then.
No.
Like this.
Yeah.
They look like some you'd get at Toys R Us back in the day. I mean, it looked like, really? How can you fit in this? Oh, I know. I just thought of the park, Bob. Have you been down to Rickwood Field, which is the oldest minor league field? I guess they're refurbishing it in Alabama. Is that right?
Yes, they are. I've been there several times, and I've got the first time I was there in 1991. And I got in and I took photos, and it had the old press box up there, which is they tore it down because it was literally falling apart. I mean, it was in bad shape. And they've contacted me about using some of my photos in the major league game they've got coming up this June or whenever it is. And that ballpark takes you back in time. It's like you went to another era, because it was patterned after Forbes Field in Pittsburgh. It has the same dimensions, and you just walk in and the nostalgia hits you right away. You can see Willie Mays running in the outfield. It's really, really cool. Anybody who's a baseball fan needs to go see this place, even if you just walk in and take a few pictures, because you'll be amazed. Your mind will just wander. And it's not in the greatest neighborhood. It's close to Old Legion Field in Birmingham. So it's a couple blocks from Legion Field, and it's not the greatest neighborhood. So, but if you go during the day, you'll be fine. You just don't want to go. Again, it's like going to Detroit. You don't want to go to some of these neighborhoods at night.
Yeah. Proceed with caution, pretty much.
Yeah.
So besides League Park, I mean, how long were you in that clubhouse? Like, were you there like 10 minutes? I mean, there's probably not much to see right there, but.
Yeah, probably about 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I was just walking around looking at stuff, and this was in the days of film, and I'm like, geez, I hope these come out, because it was really dark in there. So I was just doing everything I could photography wise to make them come out. And they came out really good, and I was very pleased with it. And it was a thrill. I mean, to get into a major league clubhouse, I don't care if it's a Tiger Stadium or whatever, it's kind of cool. As you know, John, getting in, you've been into a Progressive Field clubhouse many times, I'm sure. And it's still kind of fun to go in there because this is their domain. This is where they can be their little boys without the public eye, And of course, back in the day, what stayed in the clubhouse, you didn't write about it. If you saw something, you just didn't write about it. Nowadays, it's like, the National Enquirer, they're looking for something.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break, NBA podcast.
What's up, everyone? I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Tybus Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need to get you through the regular season, hopeful postseason, and I'd say off-season, Tybus, but is there really ever an off-season for this team?
Thankfully for our podcast, Holly, there really never is when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. Don't miss our breakdown of each week's matchup, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we know, Holly, dogs gotta eat.
Yes, they do. So hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger, Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
For the last few months, we partnered up with an Ohio-based company down in Columbus. It's called Homage. You probably have heard of this company or wearing some of their clothing. I know they sent us some shirts recently, Scott. I got a Cavaliers old school shirt in the old 70s script.
Right, now I got a Cleveland Indian shirt or a Cleveland baseball shirt with the old script C, from back like old school, like 40s, 50s, early 60s. And man, does that thing fits great. Sometimes t-shirts don't fit right. This one fits great.
Yeah, you're pretty particular about how your shirts fit.
Yeah, I don't want it too baggy. Don't want it too tight. I want it just right so I can do a lot of things around the house and work out with it and what have you. And it's great material as well.
Yeah, it's soft on your delicate skin. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, they also have great Ohio State gear, Browns gear, any MAC schools that you or your kids or you're an alum of. Great partnership there. All you need to do is go to our show notes wherever you're listening to the podcast and click on the link that we've provided there. And that is your open door to all great Homage gear. And you'll like it. We love it and continue to. So we appreciate their partnership.
What's up, everyone? Chase Smith here, host of the Chase Smith Podcast. And my podcast reflects who I am. My hobbies, my interests, my passions, my curiosities, my careers, my questions, and my family. I'll spend time talking about all types of sports, movies, TV shows, trending news stories, and other cultural events, and even faith. This is who I am, and I hope I can get to know you as well. Join me on the Chase Smith Podcast, and let's have some thought-provoking conversations, only on the Press Play Podcast Network.
If you go to Bob's website, again, it's ballparks.smugmug.com, and just scroll through. Everything is categorized in alphabetical order. I'm looking at these League Park seats or League Park pictures from, you have three different parts. You have back then in the 80s, an updated one, and then you have a part 3 and current images from the Baseball Heritage Museum. But you just look through here. It almost looks like a cave, a cavern, or like a bomb went off. It's just so deteriorated, but that's how it was.
Yeah, I mean, it hadn't been used in what? This was 35 years, 40 years when I went in there, and it showed. They just basically they moved everything out and just left it. And that was like Tiger Stadium. They just left everything.
And John, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Indians or the Guardians now, they're still wondering where some of the stuff went, because when they moved from League Park to Cleveland Stadium, didn't some stuff either get lost, scorebooks? I don't know, or maybe it went from League Park to Cleveland Stadium, and then when they went to Progressive Field, it never made it over. Isn't there some stuff that they're still wondering what happened to it?
Yeah, that's actually a different podcast for a different day.
Yes.
Long story short, it actually happened, from what I've been told, in the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
At the Municipal Stadium, and a lot of the stuff that was there was gone, and Art Modell had a role in that.
Oh, okay.
And they were strictly Indian stuff, and he didn't take it necessarily, but they had a room there. It was like a little museum, and he wanted a new room because at the time he thought every single NFL team, with the evolution of television, they were going to have a television studio in Municipal Stadium. So they used that room that was this little museum for a stadium or for a studio. It never happened, but they cleared everything out and they used it for something else. But then all those items that were in there that dated back from the 1920 World Series and earlier were gone. And it's kind of a sore subject with the ball club now, because they're trying to track down some of that stuff going back now 40 years.
But I know they do have a lot of scorebooks that they brought over.
Yes, there's a lot of a lot of scorebooks and a lot of other memorabilia as well, but nothing from League Park. I mean, there could have been stuff in that museum from League Park easily from the 1920 World Series and so forth. One more thing on League Park before we switch to a different Cleveland stadium. Bob, what was it like when you were there? And you see pictures here of walking in the tunnel to the clubhouse, to the dugout was still there, covered up by like plywood. Do you remember seeing that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was, a lot of the times, like at the Crosley Field, you'd had to go through the crowd to get to the clubhouse, or Comiskey Park in Chicago, because it wasn't dugout accessible, and you thought, my God, this was high tech back in the day. A lot of the clubs didn't have clubhouse access through the dugouts, and excuse me. I just thought, pitchers, like at Candlestick, you had that long walk to the tunnel in right field that all the visitors had to make, and they would get barraged with all kinds of crap from Giants fans,
Polo
especially if
grounds
you were the
too.
Dodgers.
Yeah.
And the thing about Candlestick is the visitors clubhouse is here. The Giants clubhouse was right across the hallway from them. And I talked to the clubhouse manager at Candlestick, and he said you wouldn't believe the fistfights that were in the tunnel between the Dodgers and the Giants. He said it was pretty. Usually, it was pretty intense.
Cleveland Municipal Stadium. How many times did you see that?
Oh, probably a half a dozen.
Mm.
And my first time was 1991. It was a day game against the Blue Jays. I did the Cleveland Detroit two-step. I did the day game in Cleveland, drove all the way to Detroit for a nightcap game between the A's and the Tigers. So I got my fix. And I thought Cleveland Stadium was cool. I understand it's so maligned, but again, you have to take into consideration they played to the elements. They didn't care that the wind was blowing off the lake. You could tell the teams that were from like LA or San Francisco, they didn't like it. But it's like the Packers. It's Packer weather. They don't care. They're going to play anyways. They'll get through the game, and that was Municipal Stadium. It was our dump, but we loved our dump. The same thing with Candlestick. That's what they call it out here. It was at the end, it was a dump, but hey, it was our dump. And we saw a lot of great memories there.
Did you have a chance to get in there before they tore it down?
Cleveland Stadium?
Yes.
Yes, I was in there in January of '96 after the last Browns game, and they pretty much tore the hell out of that place, as you guys know.
I'm looking at your pictures right now, Bob.
Yeah, in a security guard. This was January of '76, and a security guard let me in. And he wouldn't let me in the clubhouse, though. I tried every which way but loose to get in. He wouldn't let me in. I can understand it. But, I wandered around, and there was fresh snow, and you could see the scoreboard was all blacked out. I think they did that for the last Browns game. Basically, as a middle finger to Art Modell. It was kind of sad to see, because as a sports fan, you don't want to see anything trash in a ballpark or an arena or any kind of stadium.
Once after 9/11, when security got tighter, did you find, and maybe you already developed relationships, so maybe this doesn't apply, but did you find it more difficult to get access to some places?
My website saved my bacon a lot, and so is the Hall of Fame. I just tell them who I am, where I am, and bing, I get in. They absolutely, most teams are like, oh my God, I've never seen these photos before. Yeah, that's my photos, and I have quite a few friends that are SIDs in college, and when I show up at their campus, they give me carte blanche, which is kind of cool because they know I'm not going to trash them or ruin anything. I'm not going to destroy anything, like, because I respect the place. Again, there's another football fields in college. You just think like Ohio Stadium, all the greats that played there. It runs through your mind. That runs through my mind, anyways.
Yeah, your municipal stadium pictures are pretty clear, and I mean, all your stuff on here is just beautiful. All your pictures from everything.
Thank
I mean,
you very
Scott,
much.
you got I know you've seen it, but like, I urge all of our listeners to go there. Ballparks.smugmug.com. You were one of the last people to walk into what was left of League Park. One of the last people to walk into Cleveland Municipal Stadium. This was in January of '96. Scott, they tore that down in November, right?
I think it was November, yeah, because I got a stadium seat, and I think it was November when I went there and got a seat, and like Bob mentioned, it was already in pretty bad shape because of all the the last game.
It's just incredible, Bob, that you were lucky enough to do that. And we went to games at Municipal Stadium growing up, so we remember it. But obviously, we weren't in a twinkle in God's eye during the League Park days.
Neither was I, so I'm not that old.
What about Did you take anything from Municipal Stadium? Probably not with that security
No,
guard there, right?
no, they were pretty tight then. Because apparently, like you said, Scott, you said you got a seat from it. Apparently, they were already planning to, sell the seats. They didn't
Mhm.
want, they had enough damage. And again, I didn't want to burn any bridges or get somebody pissed off at me, and then once you do something like that, John, as you know, it gets around like
Yeah.
wildfire. Pretty
Quickly, yeah.
soon, everybody knows. So it's not worth it to me. If they
Yeah.
say go ahead and take something, then that's fine. But I'm
Two-
not gonna, although I know what you're thinking, I did borrow, but nobody was there for the League Park piece of wood, so I just took it.
Hey, you know what? It was just gonna rot anyway. So
Yeah, it was going to get destroyed, and like I said, I am almost 100% certain this is the only surviving floorboard from League Park. So,
that is
and that's
incredible.
that's crazy to think.
Mhm.
Has does the Hall of Fame know that you have that?
No, I should talk to John and tell him.
Do the Guardians know you have that?
No, the Guardians do not know. Can you
You're
hook
talking
me
about
up with
John
somebody with the
Thorne?
Guardians?
Yes. Well, their archivist, their curator, Jeremy Fedor, would love that. I mean, it's up to you. I would keep it if I were you, but he would love it. He would love to see it. I know Jeremy. We've had him on our podcast
Oh,
actually.
okay.
They're doing a lot of renovations, obviously, over Progressive Field now, and one of the biggest things on Jeremy's wish list was a museum. And I don't know last check what they were doing, but back and forth on the renderings and on the plans, they weren't including it, and then they were. I don't know where they're at now, but he's got closets and closets and closets full of stuff, and more recent stuff. But yeah, that'd be really cool. But Scott, you had a question. Was it John Thorne you were talking about?
Oh yeah, well you were referring to John Thorne, Bob. He's the MLB historian. I don't know if you've ever met him.
I have never met him. I know people that know him. I've not met John yet. But MLB, they're not the easiest people to deal with. John, as you probably know.
Yeah, Rob Manfred's not helping that by anyways. By
Pardon
any
me?
means. I said Rob Manfred's not helping that either.
Let's not go there. We can spend 2 hours on Manfred alone.
There's a subtle dig at the commish. So let's talk Cleveland Arena. You got to see Cleveland Arena.
No, I did not. I saw it was torn down before I got there.
Okay.
I know what's there now. Is it still the Red Cross
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. I never saw Cleveland Arena, but that is one arena. I've talked to people that were in there and they said towards the end it was a dump, but it was a great place to watch a Barons game. Because you were right there on top of the action. Same with the Cavs when they first showed up before they went to Richfield. They had back in the day, they used to have the high angled seats. So you were looking straight down at all the action. They don't do that much anymore. But I can imagine how great the sight lines were. It was just this little nondescript building that, every Clevelander who was raised in the 50s and 60s went there, in the wintertime. That's what you did. You went to a Barons game,
Yep.
because we know winters in Cleveland can be, right, Scott, can be a bit rough.
Especially back then, back in the
Yeah,
back in the
exactly.
70s, those winters are pretty rough.
Yeah. I've been in, I was at opening day in 2004 at Wrigley Field. It was 35 degrees with a 40-mile-an-hour wind blowing in off the lake. So do the wind chill.
Yeah.
And we froze our off. It was so as cold as I've ever been at a game. And I mean, I was actually sharing the blanket with a lady next to me. We were freezing. But that's what kind of makes it fun. I know Cleveland Stadium has bad weather games. The Elway game, that was a terrible, terrible weather day. But, you just bear through it. It's part of being a fan,
Yeah.
whether you're a Packers fan or a Bears fan or a Browns fan, you bear with it. It says something that these teams have not built a dome stadium because you want the elements in the upper Midwest, in the Northeast. You want those bad weather games. So these Southern teams just go, I don't want to go there. Tampa Bay was a perfect example. They hated going to the cold weather.
Yeah, they did. And they finally got over that hump in 2003 when they beat the Eagles in the NFC Championship game en route to their first Super Bowl. That was kind of their change with their weather issues in the past.
Did you guys either one of you go to Cleveland Arena, or did your dad go?
Well, I wasn't born yet. Scott wasn't born yet.
Okay,
I
never
don't know.
mind.
Yeah, I don't know if Dad. I'm sure he did, but he's never mentioned it. We should ask him.
I don't know how we've never asked him, Scott. That's
I
a
know.
big miss on us. Though
He
closed
probably.
in '76 when the
Mhm.
Cavs moved and the Barons were sold to a team in Jacksonville, I believe, right? And then
While
they
while we're talking, I'm going to send him a text and ask him.
yeah, go
See
text that.
if we get a response while we're on here.
A live response. And then Bob, that arena was demolished in '77, and so you graduated in '76. So you're 19 years old then, but you still have some great pictures of Cleveland Arena on your website.
Yeah, I found them on the net. I don't take any credit for those. It's just to show people places that I haven't been. If I've only got a few exterior shots, I can show them what it was like, and people love that. They were like, especially with the Cleveland Arena and the Olympia in Detroit. A friend of mine used to be the statistician for the Red Wings, and I met him when we went into the Olympia in '85, and he sent me my red theater seat from the Olympia. I thought, yeah, he's never going to send that, and he did. Unfortunately, Mike passed away about 30 years ago from a heart attack playing hockey, but he knew everything about it. It's like you guys. He knew everything about the Red Wings, and he took me into the locker room, the executive offices, all through that place. I was like a kid in a candy store. I mean, my eyes were this big. I'm like, oh God, I'm having a blast.
Well, my all-time favorite stadium that I was a chance to go to. I have a lot of nostalgia to, and that's Richfield Coliseum, where the Cavs played. And you've got great pictures there as well. And I want to say this is the best stadium for last, because there's a lot of things in here that we could talk for a long time on. What I find fascinating, Bob, looking at your pictures, because you were one of the last people to go in there too.
Yeah, yeah.
In one of in like 4 of your pictures, you're in the upper deck looking down. This is '94, I believe.
Yeah.
And there is the new Cavs court they have laid out, put together, that they're going to be putting in then Gund Arena with all the baby blue, black, and orange color scheme.
Interesting.
And I'm looking at it right now, and which is just a fascinating thing. You get the history of the Coliseum, then you get the present day and future. Let's just first start from the beginning here. How did you get in there? There's got to be a story of that.
Well, again, it was, I forget what day of the week it was. It might have been on the weekend. I drove up, I'm taking pictures on the outside, and I see a car by the where the Cavs used to go in, where the players' entrance. So I'm not shy. So I knocked on the door, and he was probably in his 20s. He didn't give a shit that I was there. I told him what I was doing. He said, "Come on in. We don't have a problem I don't have a problem with you." So we were talking, and he said, "You do whatever you want and take whatever you want, but send me the pictures." I said, "Not a problem." So he get me carte blanche of the arena. And as you know, I have Mark Price's locker room seat.
Yes.
I was in the clubhouse, and I've got I think it was a Larry Nance warm-up T-shirt, just an old champion T-shirt, and a pair of Brad Doherty's those bike stretch pants that they wore, in practice.
Yeah, compression shorts.
Yeah, exactly. And I did have a couple of signs from the arena, but I think those went to a guy in Florida at the time.
Yeah. Yes, I wonder who that guy could have been. They're actually, I'll have to show you here on Zoom. I'll have to show those to you where they're currently sitting in my basement. But go on with your story as we talk here. I'll multitask.
He let me run the place and do whatever I want. I went into a place that people are fascinated that I got into. It was a Cavs practice court that they had there.
Mm-hmm.
It was a small room in the back of the arena, which the public could not get into. And people were like, "How the hell did you get in there?" I said, "You just like I've taught my nephew." I said, "You need to open your mouth and be polite, and you'd be surprised what will happen. Be polite to them and be nice to them, tease with them a little bit. You can do almost anything." There are certain times when you can't. Like I was in Alabama in Tuscaloosa a few years ago, and it was Thursday before a game, and they would not let me in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and I understood that because you have the TV crews coming in, they're all setting up. I totally get that. So that just means I have to go back to Tuscaloosa again to get updated photos of Bryant-Denny.
How long were you inside the Coliseum?
Probably an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, we sat there. We sat there in the. I remember talking to this guy. I don't remember his name, but we were sitting in the Cavs locker room, just shooting the breeze. We were just talking. He's a big Cavs fan, and he was telling me, the Sinatra was the first one to play the Coliseum, and all the great rock concerts that were there, Bruce Springsteen and everybody, and it was nice to get. I like to pick people's brains when I go to a different arena or stadium. I'll talk to the fans, and I'll ask them, how long you've been coming here, what's your favorite memory, and you really want an answer, you go to new Yankee Stadium and talk to Yankee fans. They hate that place.
Yeah, I don't blame them.
The
All right,
ballpark.
Bob, here are the pictures real quick. You'll see it right there. Does that look
All
familiar?
right.
And then the other one. So Bob was kind enough to.
I'm still waiting for the check, John.
Oh, right. Yeah. Bob was kind enough to make a little transaction with me a few years ago. That was like 4 years ago, I think it was.
Oh, yeah, at least. You were still in Tampa.
Yeah, I was still in Tampa. And very cool Coliseum signs that you got. Where did you get the Coliseum? One of the signs says Coliseum alcoholic beverage policy. And it reads, under Ohio liquor law, beverages is open, continued. I can't read it from here on my contacts in. But anyways, it's a really cool sign. Where did you get it there in the Coliseum?
It was as I walked in, it was sitting under, they had another thing that said Auld Lang Syne. They put it in those letters that you can stick into the board.
Oh, yeah.
And I ripped it off the wall.
Oh, no kidding. Really?
No kidding.
Yeah, it says Coliseum alcoholic beverage policy. Under Ohio liquor laws, alcoholic beverages in open containers may not be transported from this area. Thank you for your cooperation. Very cool. It's a lot of people like to look at it. And then the other one is a Coliseum security magnet that would just go on like a car in the
they cruise the parking lot in that. But I think the problem, in my opinion now, they built the Coliseum was a great building, but they built it in the wrong area. As you guys know, it was not easy to get to in the wintertime. And a one exit getting on and off, that must have been a traffic nightmare.
Yes, State Route 303 there, Scott. How many times we get stuck in traffic as a kid going there?
Yeah, and even now, 30 years after it was after the last game, I mean, it still looks basically the same. I mean, you have Peninsula, but you're right. There's not a whole lot there.
Yeah, I know they took it back to nature. They tore everything out and just let nature take over again. Nothing is. If you did not know what was there, you would never know that there was an arena there, because you have to be an arena geek like us to know exactly where that place was.
So I talked to Mark Price a little bit, and I've developed a relationship with him over the years. And he has told me that when he comes back to Cleveland, he's there actually in Cleveland this past weekend for the Cavs Wall of Honor. And he has told me before that when his kids are in town, when they help him out with these Cavs basketball camps, they take them out there and they're like, where's the arena? This is just a field, Dad.
That's too funny. Too funny. My story is this picture, John. I think you've seen this, right? It's when I was able to get into not sneak in, but I was in Boston. And this was in '98, and the garage door was opened up in the back, and I'm walking down. I'm like, I'm just gonna walk into the outfield and take a picture of the green monster right here. And looking around, and all the workers are looking at me, and I quickly boom, 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 and then kind of walked out. And it was about 30 seconds, and at that point, I think I wore out my welcome. But I got that picture. So you wonder, though, even nowadays, if doing something like that might be a little harder.
Yeah, I think it's a little harder because of 9/11 and the security, especially Major League Baseball. I mean, the security is tight. It is tighter than a duck's fanny in the water, because they watch everything.
Right.
And it's understandable. I can understand that. But if you can get on a tour like a Fenway Park, they will take you everywhere except the locker rooms. Some stadiums, the Padres, they will. You can go into the visitors' locker rooms. Anaheim Stadium, the same thing. But Fenway will not let you in any of the locker rooms. And believe me, they are really, really small.
So Bob, I don't know if you're aware of this. Scott, want to tell them about the Coliseum floor?
Oh, wow, that's a great story. So, man, this was a couple of years ago. Man, it's a complicated story trying to get all the pieces. But anyway, the Coliseum floor is now in a small Christian school in Virginia. And evidently what was it, John? The principal down there at the time had a relationship, knew somebody
that knew Gordon Gunn, the Cavs owner.
Right. So anyway, long story short, in like 90, whatever that was, 94, 5, 6, before they tore it down, they worked out a deal. They brought tractor trailers up here. They loaded up the floor. They brought it back, and it's now in that Christian school, and they've been using it ever since.
Wow.
But John,
I wonder if the kids know where that came from. The kids nowadays, some 30 years later, I wonder if they realize where that floor came from.
And here's the second part of that story, Bob. We had Scott tracked down, I don't know how you found him, George McNair, I believe his name is, and he is the basketball coach and guidance counselor there, and was like 16 years old. He's now in his late 30s, early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
He was 16 years old and was with his dad in a church group that bought that floor, went to the Coliseum with his dad and the whole church group was there. Now he's a coach that coaches on that floor. I was lucky enough. We had him on the podcast. He told us his story. It was a great episode. For those that don't know, just go in our library on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts and find it. 2 years ago, I pitched it to our bosses over at Fox 8. They loved it. So then I got to go down to Virginia with a photographer and we interviewed George and got to see the floor and for a story for Fox 8. And Bob, I'll send it to you. I have it on my Facebook page, the story. And not only did they take the floor, or bought the floor, I should say, they bought the 2 basketball hoops. They bought the back, the back room, that practice floor you were talking about, the practice gym attached.
Yep.
They bought that scoreboard. They bought all the orange seats, just like that Mark Price seat that you have in the locker room. They grabbed a couple practice jerseys. They took the sinks from the bathroom that are now in their bathrooms.
Wow. Didn't he get the couch or the chairs from the owner's box?
The 2 leather chairs that were in Gordon Gunn's owner's box, he now has in his office.
Oh, wow.
And it's just really cool. And the kids, so to answer your question, he educates the kids on the floor.
That is awesome.
The only thing that's different about the floor is they had to tape off white sections for volleyball. Other than that, the floor looks exactly the same. They even changed their school's color schemes to match the Cavs' blue and orange floor. Ironically enough, which is kind of funny, the school's called the Warriors.
Well, I like the original burgundy and wine-colored Cavs uniforms. I thought those were cool.
Yeah.
In the 70s, it was like, they had that. A lot of the teams were doing the Bullets had those, the stripes that went on the uniforms, and I think the Atlanta Hawks had that too, and they had those lime green Hawks uniforms. The 70s was a little different with their uniforms than they are nowadays. They were a little more bold. And those Cavs uniforms, I mean, it was like the WHA Cleveland Crusaders, the purple and black. Those were cool jerseys.
Yeah. Well, the Bullets are now the Wizards, I should say, kind of modeled their jerseys off of those original Bullets with some like stripe patterns now. So that's kind of cool. They've kind of brought a twist to that back. But yeah, so that was pretty cool. Scott's got one more question for you. I have one more too, Bob, before we wrap it up. Besides the 2 signs that I purchased from you and your Cavs, those clothes and the Mark Price chair, which Mark says, I told you this before, I asked him, do you want your locker room chair back? And he told me that no, his wife wouldn't let him have it. Did you get anything else? And how much stuff was left over there when you left?
It was, they had just closed the building, so it was pretty much full. Nothing was gone. You saw the floor pictures of the original Gund Arena floor that they moved over to Gund Arena when, they had just got done painting it. He was telling me, and they had the heat lamps around. They were letting the floor dry with all the epoxy and everything on top, and they were getting ready to move it over to the Gund Arena. And I was literally the first guy in to grab something. I can only imagine what this security guard took, because I think he got an idea from me. I'm sure he loaded up his car that night and took off with a bunch of stuff.
Well, and one other thing, Scott, you remember Jim Vilk?
Yes.
Jim Vilk was a vendor. He's a local guy here in the Akron area. He and his brother used to work as a vendor at the Coliseum. We got some Coliseum seats from him, and he now is still in Akron, but also writes articles for UniWatch. And he told us he was in there like days before they tore it down, and he and his brother took a bunch of stuff. This is day 97, and the security guard that let him in there, they knew, and they were told that the demolition ball is going to hit tomorrow or next week, and there was so much stuff still left in there when they tore that place down that they left a lot, from like filing cabinets of papers to old basketball stuff, and it's just a shame that no one else grabbed it.
That's what gripes me about a lot of these. A lot of these teams just throw stuff away that has history to it. I'm trying to think, who was it that they? I can't think of the team, but there's one team that just didn't care about any of their past history. They just let it go. And I'm thinking, how can you let that stuff go? This is a history of your ball club. And there was, I can't remember the team, but it was, if I think of it, I'll let you know. I'll message you and let you know what the team was. But it really irritated me to no end. You got all this stuff and all of a sudden it's worthless to them.
Well, Bob, one more question, and I think we're going to let you go. What's on your agenda for your next project? Ballparks, as the weather gets warmer, where are you going?
Well, as you probably know through John, I had a bit of a problem after in December with COVID. And in January, I was literally paralyzed. I couldn't walk. And I got some sort of virus, and I'm learning to walk again. So I talked to John last night, and he said, Scott, and I want you to come out as soon as you can. And I said, as soon as I'm able. I'm hoping June or July, sometime in there. When I'm, like the Who said, going mobile, I'm just a hippie gypsy. I can come back and hang with you guys, and we can go to an Indians game and have a few beers and have that great stadium sauce.
The
stadium
old
mustard.
Stadium mustard. Love it.
Oh, yeah. It's that good. If people have asked me, they say, is it really that good? And I said, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Trust me.
I've got a tin here in the basement of Burtman Ballpark mustard. It's a manufactured tin, but I mean, Scott and I put that on everything. I mean, everything.
It's better than ketchup, right?
Oh my gosh. I mean, Scott, you put it in your.
The thing about it, and my mother-in-law used to call me Ketchup Man, but my wife was like, you don't use ketchup on a hot dog at a ball game. I said, you can't. It's it's like you go to Chicago and have a Chicago dog. You order ketchup on it, they look at you like you got 7 heads.
Yes.
It's just not done. And mustard, a hot dog, and a beer at a ball game, that to me is, there's nothing. That's like Bogey said, that's like eating steak at the Ritz. There's something about it. It brings you back to the simpler times when you used to go there with your friends. And my buddies and I used to go to Anaheim Stadium when we were teenagers. We knew every inch of that place, and we used to spend $4 for food and parking, or $10 for a ticket, food, and parking. I mean, $10 doesn't even get you a Coke anymore, or a bottle of water.
It just gets you a ketchup packet now.
Exactly.
Or a ballpark mustard ketchup packet.
There you go.
Well, Bob, this was a tremendous experience, man. You've been on my list for a long time. I know you and I have known each other for a few years. I know my brother's been dying to have you talk here too about all this stuff, and you're a wealth of knowledge, and we can't thank you enough to come and by on the podcast and talk to us about your journey through all these stadiums, 900 of them, and more than one.
Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah, go ahead.
My first media pass was in Anaheim in '77. I was just starting college at Fullerton College, and I was taking a photography class. So I called the Angels up and BS'd my way in. I told them, blah, 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 I'm doing this and that with my college class, and could I get a media pass? They said, sure, no problem. This was back in the day when it was easy to do. And I get there at 3 o'clock for a 7:30 game, and I walk onto the field, and my eye, I was like scared to death, because I mean, I was 18 years old. My eyes got this big. I'm walking on the field. There's Yaz standing right in front of me. Fergie Jenkins walks up to me and he says, hey, you got a camera? I'm Fergie. I've known him ever since. Fergie and I have been friends for 45 years. And so as the game is going, getting ready to start, I mean, he's introduced me to Yaz, Fisk, Carbo, all my heroes, and I'm living the life. I remember I was getting ready to go up, and Rice was standing there with Fergie, and they said, where are you going? And I said, I was going to go sit up in the stands, or I was going to sit in the photographer. No, you're sitting in the dugout with us. I swear to God. So I'm sitting
Wow.
in the dugout, and they had George Scott, and Bob Montgomery, and all these guys sitting around me. So Popeye, Don Zimmer, wouldn't see me, because you can't sit in a dugout. You cannot sit in a major league dugout unless you're an accredited player, uniform personnel. I remember it like this was yesterday. I'm sitting there, and Dwight Evans is up, and I think it was Durwood Merrill was the home plate umpire. He calls him out on a high fastball. Dewey comes walking back to the dugout, slams his bat in the bat rack and his helmet in, sits down next to me, and goes, "That burns my effing ass." And I said, "Don't worry, Dewey, you get him next time." Son of a bitch, if he does not hit a home run his next time up. I kid you not. I swear to God. So Dewey he's high-fiving everybody, and he sees me and makes a beeline for me and gives me a high five. Rice looks at me and he goes, "You're our good luck charm. Are you going to be here tomorrow night?" And I said, "I don't have tickets." He goes, "How many do you want?" He got me tickets for 10 years. I used to give him rides to the ballpark. And the upshot to this story was in '94, I was at the Astrodome, and Dewey was the hitting coach for the Rockies. And I was on the field, and I'm up by the batting cage, and they're having batting practice. And I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, "Hey, Dewey." He looks at me, he turns around, he goes, "You had a blue Trans Am in Southern California, didn't you?" And I'm like, "Son of a bitch, how you doing?" He goes, "How are you, man?" Because he used to get rides to the ballpark in my car.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is
it's
incredible.
true story. I swear to God, today you can't. There's no way you'd be able to do it today.
No. Yeah. I mean, look at you. You were part of the team for that game.
Yeah,
I guess, for 10
exactly.
years.
Yeah, exactly. He got his tickets to Fenway Park and everything.
Wow. Incredible story, man. You've lived at a tremendous sports stadium filled life with you got to write a book, Bob. You got to write a book.
I should, there's so much to my story that next time I talk to you on the phone, I'll talk to you about it, John. I had kind of a rough upbringing with my family because I was the black sheep, so to speak. But I always held on to my guns. I knew something told me, there was times that I did this and I thought, "Oh, geez, why am I doing this?" But it kept me going. I still kept doing it. My wife has been my biggest supporter. She's like, "Do it. You've got a gift, and people love what you do." So I keep doing it. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm not stopping anytime soon.
Well, we're looking forward to sometime getting you out here to Cleveland. We'll take you around and show you some spots and
Oh yeah.
got to go to League Park and everything. Man, what a treat it was here to talk to Bob Busser, the legendary Bob Busser. And you can follow and see all of his works of art. What'd you say? 175,000 pictures here on their website. Is that what it is?
150, 175. It's probably closer to 200. But yeah, I know.
Yeah. Go to
My wife is like, "Thank God for digital, because we'd be bankrupt right now."
Right. Go to ballparks.smugmug.com to see all your favorite pictures from stadiums, Cleveland or not. There's stuff on Ohio State here, which is a conversation for a different day. St. John Arena here, which is awesome. That's on my bucket list to go. Wish they could play games there. The Horseshoe and many other ones. You can see some of those pictures that we were talking from Cleveland Arena, Municipal Stadium, League Park, Richfield Coliseum, and all that good stuff there on the website here.
I really appreciate it, guys. I'm really looking forward to coming back to Cleveland. It's a great city, and I'm looking forward to hanging with you guys, because I think we're going to be like three long lost friends just shooting the crap over a few beers and yelling at the Indians or the Guardians. Excuse me. It's an old habit. It's like
We all do it.
I call it New Comiskey Park. I don't call it Guaranteed Rate Field or whatever. I'm sorry. I don't like corporate names.
Bob, thanks so much for joining us. It's such a treat, and we hope to talk to you really soon.
Scott, I hope you have good weather this spring in Cleveland. I know you may get snow on opening day. So.
Hey, it happened before in 2007. We'll see if it happens. Hopefully it doesn't happen this time with the eclipse coming here. It'll be right over us here in Cleveland here on April 8th. Bob, thanks for joining us and stopping by here on this latest edition here of Sabol Brothers on the Baseline Podcast, right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, like the show, helps us out, helps out the algorithm. Follow us at Sabol Brothers on Twitter. Follow yours truly at John_Sabol.
And you can follow me at Scott Sabol, FOX8.
We'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.